Sorry about that. Back in 1797, which was George Washington's farewell address, because that's when he left office, George Washington warned the nation of the great danger that was posed to our former government by political partisans. George Washington cautioned us that extreme partisanship agitates the community with ill-founded jealousies and alarms. It kindles the animosity of one part against another, and it foments occasionally a riot or an insurrection. He could not have given a better description of what we see in present-day America. On January 6th, we suffered both the riot and the insurrection that the prescient father of our country had predicted. The unprecedented attack on the seat of our government should have served as a shocking wake-up call for congressional Republicans about the dire consequences of their hyperpartisanship. When GOP congressional leadership immediately spoke out against the squatter Trump's instigation of the insurrection, it appeared the message had been received, but that did not last long because why would it? Senate Minority Leader Moscow Mitch, who's a Republican from Kentucky, who was apparently suffering the trauma of losing 2 Senate seats in Georgia and fretting that he might not realize his dream of taking back control of the Senate, had quickly redoubled his partisan posturing. Many Republicans at both the national and state levels were intrigued by the Trump strategy that came close to snatching an undeserved victory from the jaws of electoral debate. And this calculated how that strategy might ensure victory next time with the installation of the partisan election officials and some strategic changes to voting laws in the Republican-controlled states. Almost worse than the attempted takeover of our government by Trumpist forces in the present denial by so many Republicans about the horrifying events of that day and the continuing danger that they pose to American democracy. And how do we get to this ugly state of affairs? And where partisan interests trump our national interest? Probably so. Although neither of our political parties have clean hands, the Republican Party is primarily responsible for today's slash and burn political partisanship. Former Representative Newt Gingrich, a Republican from Georgia, laid out the path to toxic polarization of American politics during his tenure as Speaker of the House in the 1990s. In the ensuing years, the GOP politicals have fashioned their form of extreme partisanship to perfection. And particularly in the last 5 years under the squatter Donald Trump's noxious influence, Moscow Mitch and House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, who's a Republican from California, now lead the Take No Prisoners partisan warfare in the respective houses on Congress. In recent days, we have seen several instances in which GOP legislators have tried to squeeze what we call the partisan advantage out of the matters that were historically of concern to both parties. A recent instance involved the national debt, which increased about 7.8%. It increased by $7.8 trillion during Trump's squadancy, and Congress needed to urgently increase the statutory debt limit by mid-December to avert any economic disaster. Moscow Mitch announced weeks ago that no Republican senators would support an increase solely as a cheap political trick to shift blame for the increase on Democrats. The Democrats gave in last week in order to save the economy, something the GOP senators were willing to risk just to score political points. But then on December 9th, every Republican senator voted to block the current President Biden's vaccine mandate for large employers, knowing that the House would not go along. Again, the lockstep GOP vote appeared to be just a move to gain partisan advantage. Several Republicans have tried to have it both ways anyway, doing whatever they can to assist the spread of the virus by opposing shots and masking, and at the same time criticizing the current president for failing to get the pandemic under control. But playing politics with the pandemic trumps the health and safety of their own voters. A recent study found that countries that voted heavily for Trump in 2020 have a COVID-19 death rate that's 3 times higher than those that voted heavily for Biden. But political advantage apparently trumps saving lives. For decades following World War II, the GOP fancied itself as the bulwark against Soviet and Russian aggression, and strangely enough, all that changed with the election of Donald Trump, and who could not keep from fawning over Russian President Vladimir Putin. But Trump was an absolute gift to Putin because Putin installed him in the office. GOP lawmakers just have supported Trump's Putinophilia because we heard nary a peep of disapproval from them during Trump's tenure. The GOP has done an about-face on Putin and Russia since Joe Biden became president. Kevin McCarthy has criticized Biden for giving Putin a pass, although that would accurately describe what McCarthy gave Trump for 4 years. Senator Tom Cotton, a Republican from Arkansas, chimed in on the same day as the Biden-Putin summit, falsely claiming that Biden was appeasing Putin. So much for speaking to the enemy with one voice. And there are many other instances where GOP extremism has damaged the national interest. The most dangerous and shameful instance was the rabid partisanship that, in George Washington's words, it fomented a riot and an insurrection in Washington, and America's voters must take heed and throw the partisans out in coming elections if we hope to maintain our democracy. So if you like the video, give the video a like and subscribe to my channel, RBW King, and also hit the notification bell so that you'll be notified when a new video comes out, and thanks for listening.